Arturo here, but you can call me Art. This is Explorations in Art History, starring me. And the hand. Well, what about the rest of me? Hello? People watching from around the world, and I'm stuck waiting on some five-fingered prima donna. Okay, well, that's better. Woo! That Mediterranean wind feels pretty, breezy. It looks like we'll be talking about the Greek and Roman period. Leave it to the Greeks to turn geometry into art. 1000 to 700 BC marked a period in Greek art called the geometric period because of the decorations on the pottery of the day. Simple geometric designs were combined into a repeating pattern that circled the pot. Later, abstract figures of animals and people appeared. They used pots for storing wine and oil, for eating and drinking, as prizes at athletic games, and even as burial markers. Start as a tot, end as a pot. Hey, it was a joke. Let me out. You guys? Here. Guys. In the Archaic period, their art began to move toward more realistic portrayals of the figure. From the Egyptians, Greeks learned the trick of adding hair down the back of their marble statues to give strength to the neck area, and spreading the stance of the legs to give a statue stability. Ow! Too much stability! Male statues were called kouros, and the females, kourē. Greek pottery styles changed as well. They created the popular black figure ware style, which showed black figures on red pots. And then they reversed the formula into another popular style called red figure ware, showing red figures against a black background. Red figure or black? Which one makes me look thinner? Greece, however, wasn't one big happy country at the time. Instead, they had several Greek city-states. The two top dogs, Athens and Sparta, were often at odds, jockeying for position and power, until the Persians attacked in 480 BC. Then Athens and Sparta dropped their differences for the moment, and together they repulsed the invaders. But not before Persia had done some serious damage to the city of Athens. It was time for the Athenians to rebuild. Surging with confidence after their triumph over the Persian Empire, the Greeks launched into a golden age called the Classical period. Pericles, the leader of Athens, ordered the rebuilding of the temples on the Acropolis, where the famous sculptor Phidias decorated the Parthenon, a temple dedicated to Athena, the founding goddess of Athens. Classic sculptures became more realistic and at the same time, idealistic. Sculptors like Polykleitos searched for the mathematically perfect proportions of human beauty. Poses became more natural by using principles like contrapposto, a pose that gave an elegant balance to the figure by shifting the angles of the shoulders to the pelvis. Using the ratio of the size of the head to the body, Greek artists discovered that the average male or female has a proportional height of 6.5 to 7 heads. By increasing the size of the body to the head, they discovered a more visually appealing proportion. Even today, comic book artists use these idealized proportions to draw superheroes. Art will smash! Yeah! In 336 BC, Alexander the Great took power and spread the Greek Empire from Egypt to the borders of India. His death ended the Classical period. In the Hellenistic period, Greek sculptors still popped out amazingly lifelike sculptures, but now they added more emotion and action, like poor Laocoon and his two sons being strangled by two giant snakes sent by the gods as punishment. The sculptor Praxiteles broke the long Greek tradition of portraying male subjects in the nude and the females clothed with his Aphrodite of Knidos, which became the first nude woman. More Roman copies were made of this Greek sculpture than any other. The idea of empire appealed to the Romans too, and in 214 BC, they took control of Greece. The Romans loved Greek culture. They copied Greek statues, paintings, and architecture. They even adopted the Greek gods, though they renamed them all. Zeus, meet Jupiter. Poseidon, meet Neptune. Aphrodite, meet Venus. The Romans, though, were much more interested in portraiture of real people. Instead of seeking the ideal, they sought for a true likeness of their subject. Warts and all. Also, Romans used art as propaganda to promote a political agenda and glorify emperors and their exploits. Emperor Augustus had himself portrayed as a strong young military leader in his warrior's breastplate, even though he was much older at the time. Kind of like some people's Facebook picture. Trajan's column is like movie scenario in stone, the sculpted scenes depicting Roman battles and their ultimate victory. Roman architects became masters of the arch and the dome. The arch was a huge innovation for the creation of bridges and aqueducts. And the dome became the staple of big official buildings, like the Pantheon, which became one of the most influential buildings in Western architecture. The expansion of the Roman Empire spread Greek and Roman ideas throughout Europe, which formed the foundation of Western culture. Even today, we are still influenced by ideas developed in ancient Greece and Rome.
Arturo Pittore here, but you can call me Art. This is Explorations in Art History, starring me. And the hand. Well, what about the rest of me? I'm waiting. Ow! Oh! Ow! Ow! What's happening to me? I feel so emotional, all torn up, and like my life has been shattered, and Tissue, please? Okay, I see we're going to be talking about 20th century art. At the beginning of the 20th century, the Fauves, a French term for wild beasts, led by Henri Matisse, used color in a way to defy reality. One term applied to the new approaches in art was avant-garde, a French military term that meant the advanced guard. Being avant-garde was the cool, hip, in thing to be. Charge! The son of a Spanish art professor, Pablo Picasso was an art prodigy, trained in the academic style, as shown by this self-portrait he painted at 14. In 1907, Picasso began painting Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. This groundbreaking painting replaced the linear perspective in rounded volumes of traditional art with splintered planes and a deliberately flat 2D surface. It kicked off a new experimental movement called Cubism. Mr. Art, your mission, if you decide to accept it, is to infiltrate the Dada movement. The time, 1916. During World War I, a group of rebel artists decided if society was going to behave so badly, then they wanted no part of its traditions. Marcel Duchamp started by painting a mustache and beard on the Mona Lisa, and a French vulgarity underneath. Rude. The only rule of the Dadas was no rules. So Duchamp then exhibited a urinal as a piece of modern sculpture, named it The Fountain, and signed it with a fake name, Arturo Pittore. After all, without rules, anything could be art. At first, the public was revolted, which delighted the Dadaists. Their art was meant to be a poke in the eye of the world, and it was succeeding. But eventually, Dadaism became accepted and even respected, shocking the Dadaists and causing their movement to self-destruct in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. For surrealists, there was another landscape to explore, the landscape of dreams. Salvador Dali, flamboyant, eccentric, and a master of self-promotion, painted The Persistence of Memory in 1931. Some critics interpreted this work as a visual expression of the new theory of relativity. But when asked on his deathbed if the imagery of the melting pocket watches had to do with Einstein's theories, Dali replied, "No, it's based on my perception of camembert cheese melting in the sun." Huh. The Belgian artist René Magritte created his surrealistic fantasies by combining everyday objects together in unusual combinations and applying a twist to the logic of the world. Some critics complained that his art provided no answers, only enigmas. And don't ask me, you can't expect a man with an apple on his nose to provide any answers. As a child, Vasily Kandinsky learned to play cello and piano. As a leader in the art movement called German Expressionism, Kandinsky was deeply influenced by music his whole life. Kandinsky claimed he could see musical tones as colors and vice versa. He left behind representational art for pure abstract compositions, painting colors as notes to create visual harmonies that, like music, expressed various emotional states. Though born in Russia, he spent much of his adult life in Germany until the Nazis came to power in 1933 and he fled to Paris. Abstract Expressionism emerged in America out of the chaos of World War II. More a philosophy than a distinct style, its leading figure, Jackson Pollock, developed a new technique of dripping paint onto a large canvas. Pollock would dance around the canvas, flinging paint like a jazz musician, improvising as his mood dictated. Abstract Expressionism was the first American art movement to gain international significance. Just make sure you're not in the line of fire when the creativity is flowing. Anybody got a moist towelette, please? Tissue, napkin? Pow! Biff! Bam! Pop art was a sock in the solar plexus to the intellectualism of abstract expressionism. Andy Warhol, who trained as a commercial artist, was able to bridge the prejudice gap of the fine art world with his large prints of images from popular culture. Mixing low art with high art. Potato, potato, tomato, tomato. Soup's on! In the 60s, rock and roll music made the teenagers dance, and op art aimed to make eyeballs rock and roll with their optical illusions. Like this composition by Bridget Riley, called Movement in Squares. When you stare at it, the eyes see an illusion of movement. It's, feeling kind of queasy. Is the painting moving, or have we put out to sea? A little Dramamine on the set, please? Oh, I need to sit down. Georgia O'Keeffe lived in New York City, but loved New Mexico, which she called the Far Way. When her husband, the famous photographer Alfred Stieglitz, passed away, she moved to her land of inspiration. Explaining her large paintings of flowers portrayed as if under a magnifying glass, she said, "Well, I made you take time to look at what I saw. Something new from something old." Born a Pueblo Indian in Santa Fe, Maria Martinez was inspired by ancient pottery shards of the Neolithic ancestors of her tribe. Trying to recreate the black-on-black designs took a long process of trial and error. She eventually mastered the process, bringing the past into the present and helping to create a new recognition of pottery as art for the modern world. Built in the Great Salt Lake, Smithson's Spiral Jetty is a sample of another kind of art which is called earthwork sculpture, or land art. Unlike outdoor sculptures created in a studio and then added to the landscape, land art is made from nature, soil, rocks, logs, branches, and water, and is made to exist as part of the landscape. 20th century art, often just called modern art, was above all else experimental. As the century progressed, art became less group movement oriented and more of an individual search for new creative ways of expression.